Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. The stars over Vega Prime sparkled serenely, a tranquil backdrop to the thriving human colony nestled on the planet's surface. For decades, this remote outpost had been a testament to human resilience, a beacon of civilization in the vastness of space. The colony was a marvel of engineering, a network of domed cities connected by sleek transport tubes, all powered by a fusion core that drew energy from the planet's twin suns. The people of Vega Prime lived in peace, secure in their belief that they were safe from the dangers of the universe. But that belief was shattered in an instant. The alien fleet arrived without warning, materializing out of the void at the speed of light. They struck before the colony's defenses could even register their presence. Planetary shields crumbled under the assault, and the outermost cities were reduced to smoldering ruins in seconds. The screams of the dying filled the comms channels, a chorus of despair that echoed through the halls of the colony's command center. Dr. Ethan Carter stood frozen in the war room, his mind racing to comprehend the impossible. The images on the screens before him showed devastation on a scale he had never imagined. Entire districts obliterated in the blink of an eye. The enemy was unlike anything humanity had ever faced, a fleet that could move at the speed of light, striking with such precision and fury that resistance seemed futile. Beside him, Commander Sarah Winters barked orders to her subordinates, her voice a sharp contrast to the chaos unfolding on the screens. She was a decorated officer, known for her calm under pressure, but even she struggled to maintain her composure. "We need a counterattack plan, and we need it now," she demanded, her eyes locking onto Ethan's. "What can we do against something that fast?" Ethan swallowed hard, forcing his mind to focus. He was a quantum physicist, a man of science who had spent his life pushing the boundaries of what was possible. But this was beyond anything he had ever prepared for. "There's no way to fight them with conventional weapons," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "Our systems are too slow, too predictable. We're trying to hit ghosts." Sarah's gaze intensified. "Then we need something unconventional. Ethan, you've been working on that quantum entanglement propulsion theory. Is there any way we can use it?" Ethan blinked, the gears in his mind slowly beginning to turn. Quantum entanglement propulsion, or QEP, was a project he had been developing for years, a theoretical drive system that could potentially allow a ship to move instantaneously across vast distances by exploiting the entanglement of particles. It was untested, unproven, but in this moment of desperation, it was their only hope. I think it could work," Ethan stammered, his voice gaining strength as he spoke. "If we can build a ship with a QEP drive, we could match their speed, maybe even exceed it. But it's a huge gamble, and we don't have much time." Sarah nodded, her expression grim. "We don't have any time at all. Get your team together and start working on it. I'll handle the military side of things. We need to hold them off long enough for you to get that ship ready." Ethan didn't waste another second. He sprinted down the corridors of the command center, his heart pounding in his chest. The colony was already on high alert, with engineers and scientists rushing to their posts, desperately trying to patch the holes in the planetary defenses. But Ethan knew that these efforts were nothing more than a stopgap, a futile attempt to buy time. He reached his lab and burst through the doors, finding his team already gathered around the central hollow table. They were some of the brightest minds in the galaxy, hand-picked for their expertise in quantum mechanics, particle physics, and advanced engineering. But right now, they looked as shell-shocked as he felt. "We have a plan," Ethan announced, his voice slicing through the tension in the room. "We're going to build a ship with a QEP drive. It's our only chance to match the speed of the alien fleet and fight back. I know this is a long shot, but it's the only shot we have." His words hung in the air for a moment, the weight of the task ahead sinking in. Then, one by one, his team members nodded, determination replacing fear in their eyes. They had no choice but to succeed. For the next several hours, the lab was a hive of activity. Blueprints and simulations filled the holoscreens as the team worked feverishly to design the ship. The Nova Spear, as they christened it, would be a sleek, agile vessel capable of withstanding the immense stresses of light-speed travel. At its heart would be the QEP drive, a complex array of entangled particles that, if everything went according to plan, would allow the ship to blink across space instantaneously. But as the hours ticked by, problems began to mount. The QEP drive was notoriously unstable, and every simulation ended in catastrophic failure. The ship's structure was too weak to handle the stresses of light-speed jumps, and the energy requirements were far beyond what their current reactors could provide. Tensions flared as tempers frayed. "This is impossible," one of the engineers snapped, throwing down his tablet in frustration. "We're trying to do in hours what would normally take years." Ethan slammed his hands on the table, drawing everyone's attention. "I know this seems impossible, but we're out of options. Every second we waste, more people die. We have to make this work. Failure is not an option." His words reignited their resolve, and they returned to their work with renewed vigor. They pushed the limits of their knowledge and their technology, improvising solutions on the fly. There were setbacks, failed tests, damaged components, moments when it seemed the entire project would collapse. But they pressed on, driven by the knowledge that the fate of Vega Prime rested on their shoulders. Meanwhile, Sarah Winters and her military forces fought a desperate defensive battle on the surface. The alien fleet had not yet launched a second full-scale attack, but they continued to harry the colony's defenses with lightning-fast strikes. Every time the enemy ships appeared, they moved too quickly to be targeted, their bright flares vanishing as quickly as they came. The colony's defense grid was slowly being worn down, and Sarah knew that the next major assault would be their last. At last, after what felt like an eternity, the Nova Spear was ready. The ship hovered in the hangar bay, its sleek, angular hull gleaming under the harsh lights. The QEP drive hummed softly, a barely contained storm of energy waiting to be unleashed. But even now, on the brink of deployment, there were doubts. Ethan stood before the assembled crew, his face etched with exhaustion but his eyes burning with resolve. "I won't lie to you," he began, addressing the men and women who would pilot the Nova Spear into battle. "This ship is untested. The QEP drive is a prototype, and we don't know what will happen when we activate it. But if we don't try, Vega Prime will fall. We have to believe in the science, in our skills, and in each other. We've come too far to fail now." The crew responded with a solemn nod, their expressions mirroring his determination. There was no turning back. Sarah joined Ethan at the ship's airlock, her battle-worn armor a stark contrast to his lab coat. "I'm coming with you," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Ethan started to protest, but she cut him off. "You're the only one who understands the QEP drive. If something goes wrong, we'll need you on board. And I'm not letting you take all the risks alone." He relented, knowing there was no time to argue. Together, they boarded the Nova Spear, taking their places on the bridge. The crew moved with precision, running final checks and preparing for launch. "All systems green," the helmsman reported. "QEP drive is online." Ethan took a deep breath and activated the drive. The ship shuddered as the quantum entanglement field enveloped it, bending the very fabric of space-time. The stars outside the viewport seemed to blur, then stretch into streaks of light as the Nova Spear leaped forward, faster than the human eye could follow. They emerged in the midst of the alien fleet, the enemy ships arrayed in a deadly formation around Vega Prime. The aliens had not expected a counterattack, much less one that could match their speed. For a moment, there was stunned silence on both sides, the human and alien crews alike struggling to process the impossible. "Fire the antimatter cannon," Sarah ordered, snapping the humans out of their shock. The Nova Spear's weapon systems came to life, and a lance of searing energy shot from the ship's prow, striking the nearest alien vessel. The explosion was instant and catastrophic, the alien ship disintegrating in a flash of light, but the aliens were quick to react. Their ships began to move, accelerating to light speed in an attempt to flank the Nova Spear. Ethan's hands flew over the controls, directing the QEP drive to blink the ship out of harm's way. The Nova Spear darted across the battlefield, engaging the enemy with precision strikes, each blast of the antimatter cannon ripping through the alien fleet. Despite their best efforts, the battle was far from one-sided. The alien ships were faster, more maneuverable, and their numbers seemed endless. The Nova Spear sustained heavy damage, its hull buckling under the stress of repeated lightspeed jumps. Warning lights flashed across the consoles, and the ship's systems began to falter. "We can't keep this up," one of the engineers shouted over the din of alarms. "The QEP drive is overheating. We need to shut it down or it'll tear us apart." Ethan glanced at Sarah, his face grim. "If we shut down now, we're dead. We have to take the risk." Sarah nodded, her jaw set in determination. "Do it. Push the drive to its limit. We'll end this, one way or another." Ethan's fingers flew across the controls, overriding the safety protocols. The QEP drive roared to life, the ship shuddering violently as it accelerated faster than ever before. The Nova Spear became a blur of light, weaving through the alien fleet with impossible speed. As they approached the heart of the enemy formation, Ethan executed a final, desperate maneuver. He redirected the QEP drive's energy into the antimatter cannon, supercharging the weapon for one last shot. The ship's hull groaned under the strain, but it held together long enough for the cannon to fire. The blast ripped through space, a blinding beam of energy that tore the alien flagship in half. The explosion cascaded through the fleet, disabling the lightspeed drives of the remaining ships. The aliens were caught off guard, their speed reduced to a crawl, making them easy targets for the remaining human warships. One by one, the alien vessels were destroyed, their shattered hulls drifting lifelessly through the void. The battle was over. The Nova Spear limped back to Vega Prime, its hull scorched and battered but victorious. The colony had been saved, but the cost was high. The once thriving cities were in ruins, and the survivors mourned the thousands who had perished in the attack. In the aftermath, Ethan and Sarah stood side by side on the scorched surface of Vega Prime, gazing up at the stars. "We did it," Sarah said softly, her voice tinged with both relief and sorrow. Ethan nodded, but his thoughts were already racing ahead. The victory had bought them time, but the alien threat was far from over. The lightspeed attackers were unlike anything humanity had ever faced, and he knew that they had only seen the beginning. "We need to be ready for what comes next," Ethan said, his voice filled with quiet resolve. "This wasn't just an attack, it was a test. And we have to be prepared for whatever they send our way." Sarah glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "We will be together." As the sun began to rise over the shattered landscape, they turned their backs on the devastation and walked toward the future, knowing that the battle for humanity's survival had only just begun.